Right, as I said earlier on the Facebook Live, this is live right now, but by the time you see it posted, not live, videoed continuation of my walk in Ruislip Woods, Ducks Hill Road, Ducks Hill Lane, Ducks Hill Road. I think it's Ducks Hill Road, which goes between Northwood and Ruislip. As I got through here earlier, there was, in fact, let's have a quick look out on this view again and I'll be out of here. There was a problem with the signal, and so therefore the live paused. So I walked back towards where I last had a signal, and the feed came back, and I finished off and said that I was going to do this, film in video and post it. The horse is hiding behind that tree. The bonus of this is that I will get to keep this footage on my own devices, not just at Facebook's approval. So that's good, because I'm just trying to figure out what's going on here. Sorry for all this rummaging around, but I'm just trying to keep the phone case from getting in the way of the lens. So yeah, I get to keep this and still get to post it, and people can watch it. I don't have to worry about the signal dropping. I'm not even sure if it will get posted if the signal drops. But anyway, yeah, probably not. There it is. Or she. I know you're not supposed to feed them, and I don't, but sometimes I think to myself, it'd be nice to bring an apple or something so I can actually acknowledge the horse, because just saying hi just doesn't seem to quite do it. They're quite happy doing their own thing, aren't they? They've got a whole field full of food, I suppose. Anyway, so as I've said a million times, it's really just not the same recording a video and talking rather than a live, because even if there's no one watching the live at the time, there's always the chance they can do. And it's really good when somebody does join, or if there's a few people on it, then it's nice to know you're actually talking to someone, not just to yourself. Prehumously, is that really absolutely no such word, but as opposed to posthumously, after the event, or actually more literally, I think after death, but that's not really what I was trying to put across. I'm deliberating. I think that's going to be back to the car, and I think it's going to be back to the car a little bit sooner than I want to go back to the car. So I'm just going to go a little bit further down and come out a little bit further down. I think you can go into the woods there, but anyway. So anyway, it's not so much a walk in the woods, it's whatever it is it that I'm doing. I'm rambling, mentioning a few things, looking at stuff. I would normally go for walks anyway. I kind of like that, just get a little bit of motion in the body. What I do for a living doesn't involve much of this, that's for sure. For those of you who don't know, I am actually a computer programmer, but I am a particular type of computer programmer, which tends to get called low code. I'm a low code computer programmer, and what that means is that I don't sit there like you see in some of these sophisticated thrillers. You know, I don't sit there type in reams and reams and reams and reams of code, you know, with a brilliant but suspicious mind. I assemble a lot of, you could almost call it pre-written code. It is programming. You do have to be able to write a little bit here and there, but the main thing that defines it is the speed. It's very, compared to sitting and just type in a letter that no one can read except for a computer and another programmer, you can get stuff done a lot faster. The downside tends to be that you usually have to, for the end user, the person using that product or that code or that programming, they usually have to buy licenses of a program in order to read it. So for those who know a bit more about computing, that would be like back in the day Microsoft Access, or 4D was another one. I actually am a FileMaker Pro developer, if anybody knows that. I think that's probably a kennel over there. So yeah. And also in terms of what I do, it tends to be for small and medium businesses and maybe work groups in large organizations. So the marketing department of a huge organization or something, I'd write something for them. So I make apps. That's what I do. Business apps for that people share. So databases basically. Yeah, so that's what I do, and that does involve sitting down for large amounts of time. And my previous trade, if you like, whatever, it's really interesting. That's kind of exactly how a river meanders. I don't think this is quite a river though. I don't even know what kind of stream it is. Do we ever name streams? I think sometimes. Anyway, actually don't recall the exact thing that I was going to say there, but oh yeah, it was about sitting down. I'll get there in the end. Basically, yeah, it involves a lot of sitting down, and what I was doing back in the 80s and very early 90s, just about, was I was a cast sprayer. And I can remember working at places where I thought all I wanted to do was be like one of those management, won't say any of the words I used to call them, sitting down on my backside all day doing nothing and getting paid for it. That was what I thought they were doing. And probably a worryingly large percentage of them that was absolutely true for. But not all of them. Plenty of good administrators around and managers and stuff. Anyway, because I was constantly on my feet all day, the idea of sitting down, quote unquote, doing nothing was quite a great idea. I really liked that. But what I discovered years later is it's all about balance, isn't it? It's just getting a bit of everything. And so just as on the one hand, there we were for decades automating everything. A washing machine, you don't have to wash yourself. This, that, the other, everything was automation. And then another machine appeared in people's houses, and it was called a running machine. So we spent all this money on not having to do anything, and now we've bought a device so that you have to do something. I find that quite comical, but anyway, but it's about a mixture, isn't it? It's like, I don't know, there's probably people out there who come out to these woods, chop some wood to put in their fire, and then fling their dinner in the microwave. So it is, So anyway, as someone who tends to sit down a lot for his living, coming out to wander around is great. And I work for myself, so I tend to be doing this at times when other people are at a desk or doing whatever they do, hanging off the back of a dust cart or whatever. So yeah, I've done both in terms of manual and physical and mental labour. And I could say having a moderation of all is probably the better one in my experience. One thing I will say is that mental exhaustion is a hell of a lot tougher to deal with, and a hell of a lot less is known about it than physical exhaustion. You know, a little bit of rest would usually, in most people's eyes, would handle physical exhaustion. And a little tip, if a little bit of rest isn't handling your physical exhaustion, I just want to let you know that it's probably because that's not physical exhaustion, it's mental exhaustion. And that is a little bit more difficult to do. Athletes will know about second wind, and that is a clue to handling mental exhaustion. It's like operational shock. In the computing world, it was known, what did they call it back in the 90s? RSI, repetitive strain injury. That would be physical injury caused by a repetition of what you were doing. Using a mouse day on, you know, people start to get wrist problems and stuff. And all right, it's maybe not quite as severe as some of the things that happen down in the coal mines, but that doesn't mean to say it's not worthy of consideration. But in the way as the same old action done again and again and again can cause a little bit of aggravation to a body physically, the same is true mentally. If you spend all day looking at your mobile device at 6 inches away from your eyeballs, you'll probably find you do everything at 6 inches away from your eyeballs, and you start to, in a way that you can't always detect until it's really gotten a hold, you'll start to get what actually is known as mental exhaustion. And the cure for it is very simple. It's take a walk, not for the exercise, although that's great too, not for the fresh air, also that's great too, but take a walk and look at things, and specifically look at things at a different distance from your usual distance. So in other words, if you spend all day sewing, you know, at a sewing machine, you need to look at things that are, you know, look at a nest in a tree, you know, that's, you know, quite a lot further away, and then look at something that's maybe a little bit closer, and just look at things, just notice things. Go out for a walk and just look and see, you know, ask yourself, maybe if you want to make it a bit more interesting, just count a few of the branches or something on a tree, whatever, something that gets you to extrovert after introverting. And that's mental exhaustion. It's too much introversion. Introversion is looking inwards or things coming in on you. Extroversion is getting your attention back out, exterior to you. So rather than sitting in your thoughts, it's about being interested in something outside of the inside of your head or your eyeballs. And what tends to happen when you do that is you start to get tired. Well, when you do get tired, just continue to do what you're doing, just continue the walk, continue to extrovert, continue to look at things at different distances, notice things, try not to think too much. Sometimes thoughts pop up and things happen and all the rest of it, but that's fine, just carry on, do that. And you'll find you'll get what athletes call the second wind. You'll find that actually after having been tired and been so sure that the thing to do was go home and go to bed or read a newspaper at 6 inches away from your nose or whatever, if you carry on, you'll start to freshen up. And then you carry on a bit longer and you'll get a different kind of tiredness, that sort of tiredness where you think, I'm not collapsing into my head and into my bed. I'm literally going to go and have a proper re-energizing night's sleep now. You know, that feeling where you can't get the sleep you need in order to refresh, that's mental exhaustion, unless you're carrying an unrecognized physical injury. And in actual fact, quite often that goes along with mental exhaustion, that there's an injury in the body that hasn't been recognized. So a really good check up with your favourite practitioner. Might also discover that you're carrying some injuries that are that are impacting you. You know, they're getting hammered every day, and you either are or you aren't noticing it. But that can put you in your head as well. And then sometimes you might find that, you know, you might need to do that every day for a little while, or every few days or something like that. Just go out and extrovert, go out and pretty much do what I'm doing here, although I'm not doing a lot of looking. I'm pointing the camera and I'm talking and I'm thinking about what I'm going to say, so there's a certain amount of introversion there. But anyway, that was just a sort of an aside, really. You know, that subject of how to handle mental exhaustion was actually covered for me, as you know, I'm a Scientologist. I've been a Scientologist, well, longer than 30 years, but let's just say 30 years or so, and that's covered in Scientology materials written by Ron Hubbard. It's a whole bunch of stuff about exhaustion. In fact, I say a whole bunch of stuff, not very much about exhaustion, but more than enough to handle it. So it makes me laugh when you think of people who go to a gym and they go on a running machine, and there they are running on a machine in the gym, looking at a TV screen on the wall, maybe with their headphones on. And especially, and we've all done it, as you get tired running and stuff, you know, you're concentrating, you're thinking in your head, you know, how's my body doing now? How am I going to handle this next mile or whatever? So that's fine, but that's not handling mental exhaustion. That's doing something else. It's great to keep these bodies in motion. That's what they're for, to be used. Great to stay fit, healthy. Feeling you get from running when you've done enough of it to be able to do it, if you know what I mean. No one gets a nice feeling of running when they don't run. You know, run for a bus and you're like, oh my God, I'm going to die. But when you get to a certain level of fitness, running it's very nice. You can cover a lot of ground as well. You know, go for a walk where you get to see even more than you would on a walk, because it's all happening a lot faster. So I'm not knocking running. I'm just saying that if you're feeling mentally exhausted and you go to a gym to work out with your headphones on, looking at a TV screen, fixing on that, you know, it's this, you're not handling mental exhaustion. You're you're just not, basically. So find out for yourself, go try it out, and as I say, you do a little bit of it, you'll get tired. You continue through that, you get into the second wind, you'll freshen up. When you're tired, you might even start yawning a lot and have tears streaming from your eyes. I mean, just carry on. It's brilliant. It's a good sign. That's all that tiredness, if you like, coming off, if you look at it that way. Carry on doing that, and then when you start to freshen up, you know, Rome wasn't built in a day. Don't necessarily think you're going to handle everything you're trying to handle with that one thing, but you're looking at it realistically compared to anything else you may have done about the situation, you'll probably find that was actually more useful than anything you had planned, like sitting in front of the TV and, you know, reading the paper, or just mashing out, or just saying I need a new job or whatever. Maybe you do, but see if you can get rid of the exhaustion first, and and as I say, then you start to, after the tiredness, you start to freshen up, and then when you get a more realistic, more comfortable form of tiredness, if you like, then that's, you know, that will do. Take a win on that, go get some proper rest, see if you need to repeat that again. Particularly if you're a salesperson, that's really important, because you're dealing with people all the time, and you can get bashed about. Any company loses its salespeople more than any other part of the business, because that's where you come into contact with the outside world, and you can not always, you know, it's the accumulation of injury, if you like. But also in any job, any of us who know this, you know, having the right balance of repetition, so that the things you learned are helping you and are useful and can be used again in order to get a little bit of control, a little bit of organisation going. So some repetition is good to know that, yeah, most of my job consists of this, that and the other, and I'm getting quite good at it. That's great, but we all need that sort of fresh, something, you know, a different set of things to do. You know, the foreman who always seems to find a way to hop onto the forklift truck every so often, and you think, well, technically speaking, it's not really his job, but he always ends up coming down and having a little go on it, a couple of times a week or whatever. He's out there moving stuff around during people's lunch breaks, telling them that's how it's done, and he's still got it or whatever. So you just want to mix it up. That's all I'm saying, really. So that's yeah, that's kind of my thing. Is that I forgot about that, to be perfectly honest with you. When I learnt about that, I still was considering myself very much on my feet and physically, you know, doing things and stuff. But a lot of what I was doing was quite sort of introverting, if you like, and particularly as I ended up, I had a bunch of staff at one point and all the rest of it. I was very, very busy doing lots of the rest, running the rest of the organisation and everything. But eventually I decided that I'd had enough of the potential for aggravation from having staff, and decided that rather than get better at getting the right staff, which is something that I've been trained on just recently, which is really great. There's a rabbit running off in the distance. And also, rather than getting better at handling them myself, I decided to throw my toys out the pram, really, I suppose. Maybe that's a bit harsh to put it like that, but anyway, I decided to go, well, the other saying would be from the sublime to the ridiculous. I decided to do it all myself. And I could. And that's great. That was, I could pat myself on the back and say to myself, wow, I'm a resilient being, but yeah, I say I could, but not forever. And by the time I found out that one, I was very, well, you could call it burned out, really. Yeah. And the thing is, I probably could have carried on in that situation if called upon to do so. But as anyone who works for themselves know, you really have to be the one. You've got to be all the energy that you have in your business when you work for yourself comes from you. And I don't care what marketing people say and advertising and this, that and the other. At the end of the day, trust me, and you'll know this if you've worked for yourself for any length of time, if you don't want that phone to call, it won't call. And, if you don't want that phone to ring, it won't ring, in other words. And a little sign that I should probably have recognised was that when the phone did ring and I groaned, it's like, well, that is not good, is it? There was a point when that phone rang, it was like the enthusiasm was palpable. It was like, oh, good. Someone else to deal with, But it got to the point where I was basically just worn out, mentally just worn out. And I'd forgotten that I knew how to deal with that. I'd actually forgotten. And the difference was I didn't have anyone behind me to sort of say, handling those little things that happen during the course of the day that were just building up. So that was one of the first things I did when I started my business. I was getting behind the guys who were doing the work, keeping them fresh, keeping them rolling. And somewhere along the line, someone had convinced me that weren't anything to write home about, but it's not true. It was very vital and very beneficial to what we were doing. And when I started to be the main programmer, there was no one there to for me to sort of rehabilitate every time I come home and just kind of like get the day off of me so that I was ready to go the next time. So it's just one of those things. It's like a little drip in a bowl. Eventually it'll fill up, and then you've got the problem of trying to pick the whole bowl up in order to tip the water down the drain. And you look and you think by then it's like, I don't even have the energy to pick the bowl up if it didn't have water in it. So that was just mental exhaustion. That's all that was. They could get into other things about types of people and all the rest of it, and they're all valid. But the simplest thing, really, I'll put it like this: if you started to refresh from a situation like that, you'd run straight into anybody who didn't want you to. And as long as you could take that on board, whoever it was, and not sort of disbelieve it, you could handle that too. Another little tip: if you're feeling like you're being hounded, but you can't quite see who or where or what it's coming from, just find something that you can do a lot of. Find some area that you can actually expand. Go and do something. Maybe maybe just do a whole load of communicating. Get on the phone to people. If you work for yourself, get on the phone to people, start trying to drum up some business, some support, whatever. And you'll find that it's like they'll come looking for you. I think, I don't know if it's Jay-Z or if it was 50 Cent, one of them saying he says something like, I'll spray your grandma's crib and let your ass come looking for me. So in other words, I ain't going to run around trying to find where you at. I'm going to do something you don't like and you'll come and find me. And it's like that, There's certain types of people that get you into a situation where you start becoming low key, keeping your head down, not rocking the boat and all the rest of it. And if you start to suspect that you're being played by that, just rock the boat, and someone's head will pop up objecting to that, and you'll have your person. So rather than getting incredibly sophisticated in how to detect people who you don't have a solution for, someone who's not really, for whatever reason, they don't have your interests at heart at that point in time, you haven't spotted them and you don't have a solution for them, that's going to be a problem. And as I say, best way to spot someone like that is just find something you can do plenty of, some little corner, some little area that you can expand, make some ripples, and someone will object. Someone will say, that's enough of that. Don't you think you'd better do a little bit less of that? Look at you flash whatever with your new blah blah, there they are. And of course, you never hear anything if they're winning entirely, because you're not doing anything, you're posing no threat. There you are, unemployed, on the dole, haven't worked for years, it's amazing what you do when you start to expand, when you start to flourish, when you start to be a little bit prosperous. People, they'll try and be convincing, they'll come up with all kinds of reasons why you shouldn't be doing that. It's not all about money, or whatever it is. But for the most part, it's easier to spot when you're doing well. Signs of success. You start doing well, as the old saying goes, more money, more problems. It's not just money, it's more of anything, survival, more expansion, more success, more, dreaming bigger and better, trying to hit harder, saying the harder they come, the harder they fall. I mean, it's not really meant for that reason, I don't think, but there it is. Knock one out the park and someone's going to whinge, basically, and have a solution for that someone, because it's not always easy to spot. It's not always easy to knock one out the park when you've got that. A good example of that, if you want to detect it, is if you're into football, you see a guy who hasn't scored for a while, like a striker. It's quite easy to see with strikers. He hasn't scored for a while. And then he scores. The chances are, if he hasn't scored for a while, someone's squashing him. What happens is, when he scores, you'll see if you see the guy is full of joy, well, that's quite amazing. That's fantastic. But most of the time, these guys who haven't scored for a while, what you see is like aggression. They get violent. They get angry. It's like, yeah, like two fingers up, and you usually find within a few days of that over exuberant celebration in your face, you said I couldn't do it and I can, etc., etc. You'll find within a few days they're injured. Just keep an eye on it. You'll see it, and that's that. That's a game. They're in a game with someone. They either do or don't. Maybe they've got the right person in mind. Maybe they haven't. They certainly don't have a solution for the situation. Football is a competitive sport. It's not like if you go on a pitch and you're a striker and you don't score, that there's someone around you trying to put you down or something. It's difficult to score, but if you have a situation where you haven't scored in 15, 20 games or something like that, or you've got one or two and there's all this frustration and you never can quite make it, and you see that same guy, I think a recent one was Harry Maguire, his celebration when he scored. I mean, he didn't exactly endear himself to the world or to the English football fans with his sort of celebration there, but what he's doing is advertising the fact that he's getting squashed and he doesn't have a solution for it. Like him or not, maybe you never like him no matter what. It's not really the point. It's just trying to indicate the mechanism so you can maybe see him for yourself and see if there's anything there to know. And I think there is. And if you go too far, like I say, if you're bottom of the league for long enough, it will appear that you don't have any enemies except for being bottom of the league. But it's remarkable if you can pose a threat to someone, if you can put a little winning run together, eventually it would be all just too much to bear, and quote unquote they will make themselves known, and usually with some sort of an accusation against you. Sometimes they get other people to do the bidding for them, and that can make it a bit more difficult. But anyway, those two little points I just thought I'd share. Exhaustion, take a walk, look at things at different distances if you're talking about mental exhaustion, which so much of us do have these days, because there's so much fixed attention. There's so much of our lives where we're spent in some sort of fixed point of focus. And the other thing is types of people, which what I've said there is just a little, not quite as hard and fast rule as the one on exhaustion, but it can be quite handy to help you spot. Basically, if you're feeling like you're being stopped, you probably are. And if you can find a way to start, it might not be your favourite point, of starting, but if you can find something some sort of product you can get rolling, quite often you'll find that if you are being stopped, the person who's doing that, and it will be a person, not a thought, will pop up. It's too much for them to bear. So yeah, there you go. And my point really on we're talking about there really is stress, and it's great that in the last decade or two, stress has become something that is recognised as a source of illness and injury. And all I would add to that, and you'll see in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, this will become common knowledge too, is that stress is not a thought. It's caused by a person that you don't have a solution for, that you may or may not know you're in some sort of game with. But if you're suffering from stress, you certainly don't have a solution for it, even if you know where it's coming from. So stress is a large cause of the reason of accidents, injuries and illnesses. But it's not a thought, it comes from a person. There's someone in your environment who'd rather, rightly or wrongly, who'd rather you didn't quite you didn't quite be. And knowing who it is, how you got into that situation, how to get out of it is vital. And 20 years ago, no one was really talking about the fact that stress was a bona fide cause of illness and injuries and stuff. But yeah, as I say now, you find anyone would just nod if you say that to them. Oh yeah, maybe you're just stressed. It's, oh yeah, that's what it is. All right, fine, you've started the conversation. People at that point, a lot of the time, think they've finished that conversation. No, you've started it. Okay, stress. Okay, stress to who? Stress by who? Doesn't give you license to go and wind them up. In fact, that's how you get it there. So just recognise that fact. If you're feeling stressed, you can say if it's temporary, think, it doesn't matter, I'll just go to bed, whatever, go shoot a gun or drive my car or walk the dog or whatever, then fine. But we're talking about the debilitating day after day after day after day, just can't get, can't really achieve any progress or happiness or whatever. It's a person, not a thought. Thought comes after a losing battle with that person. So if you know who it is, see if you can handle it with some communication. If not, if you have the opportunity, just be where they're not. Just find yourself not where they are. I had a guy once, some years ago, didn't really know that I shouldn't have been doing this, but I was working somewhere, wasn't doing particularly well, to be honest with you. I was on minimum wage, and in fact I was below minimum wage. I was telling someone the other day, I don't know how he got away with that, but I was below minimum wage, cleaning cars, and there was a guy there, probably didn't want to be there either, but he was in a sort of management type position, I suppose, but he was on his feet handling the guys who were cleaning and stuff. Anyway, he had a story to tell me about his mate who's got one of these cars, that car's the other car, and a mate who's done this, that and the other, and another mate who did blah, and one time he did this, and I'm thinking it's banter. I'm like, he's telling a story, I'm telling a story, he's telling a story, I'm telling a story, and he's giving me this look on his face, and I'm thinking, I don't know what that is, but anyway, let's just carry on. And one time my mate done this, one time my mate done this, and then double this, and we'd gotten into like a bit of a talk-off, got into a bit of a game. I didn't really realise it. That was what was happening. Was he would tell a story and I would tell a story, but it's like top trumps. I wasn't necessarily trying to outdo him. I was just taking the conversation onto another level, and he would take it onto another level, And anyway, a bit later on that day, I was reversing the van that I used to do mobile cleaning in, and hit a post, shattered the back window. I'd been moving cars around yards as a sprayer and stuff for years, from the age of about 14. I'd been driving and stuff, and it's quite unusual to do such a thing as that, even though, the post wasn't visible. If you think about it, you just have a feeling that something's there. Have you ever done that? We've all done that. You suddenly look over your shoulder and you think, how did I know to look over my shoulder and see that thing that was out of my sight? We just know, and we can get into a whole thing on that, but it's not really the point. Point is, we've all driven stuff with no rear visibility and not hit something. So anyway, and I remember the look on his face. He looked quite satisfied as I was reversing, and I couldn't understand why he was looking at me in the van, and seemed quite happy, and bang, I hit this thing, and the satisfaction. It was like he was so relieved and he was so happy that I'd done this. I thought, that's interesting. And I think he expected me to be suitably put in my place from there on. But I sort of recognised the mechanism of what that was, and I sorted it out in my own way. And I arrived for work the next morning fresh as a daisy, and I apologise for this form of terminology here, but I think he thought that from now on I was going to be his bitch, you know. And not only was I wasn't even making a big thing about it. My thing was, I recognised that game. There's a guy I'm not going to have interaction with. I'm not even going to make a game of telling him that I'm not doing that. I'm just not going to do it. And that was the key, was just saying, all right, fine, drop it. That, you know, it's like he's not important to me, or that game is not important to me. I don't need to win that game. There's a game I shouldn't have been playing. Drop it. So whether he this and shouldn't have that, and I was only doesn't matter, just drop it. Move on. And I genuinely had that feeling. And he was quite shocked that I wasn't cowed and introverted and sheepish that morning. I wasn't styling it out either. I wasn't like overly bold. I was just like, it had gone. The moment had gone. I no longer had that guy in my world, if you know what I mean. Didn't have to ignore him, could say hi, could do whatever, but I'd got it. It's like I acknowledged him as, okay, so that's what we have. Okay, I'm just disconnecting. I'm not doing anything other than not having that, because I have no use for that game other than for the little period of time that it lasted, where I got to learn something. Small price to pay. I don't really always want to learn by reversing my car into something, but that was my point really, is just trying to get across, is that you can get into a situation where, a bit like Rambo was all about that, you know. You drew first blood, no you did, no you, then it goes back and forth, tit for tat, tit for tat, tit for tat, and it's just making both people miserable. If you can just drop that, I'm not saying that I can always, but whenever I've been able to, whenever I have done on those subjects, it's been really useful just to take a look at the situation and just drop it, just let it go, just say, there's a game I no longer play. I don't need to look back on my record and say, well, I won 3, I lost 12, and I need to I need to win more before I give it. No, I shouldn't have been playing it. Just drop it. How did I get into a situation where I was having a conversation with a guy whose nose was put out of joint every time I told a good story? Do I have a use for that? Is it what's that for? I don't even condemn the guy. I'm just saying, in that situation, if that's what, you know, maybe some other aspect of the friendship, or the, not friendship, but that interaction would have come alive from there. You know, maybe after a few days he might have come to me and sort of said, you know what, I should have told you that you were getting close to that post. Maybe. But it doesn't matter. What was most important to me was that I didn't have that in my existence anymore. That wasn't in my day. A little, you know, little tit for tat game with someone that I just really didn't need to be playing. And as I say, it wasn't about showing him or anything like that. That would have been a continuation of the game too, wouldn't it? It was just literally drop it. And I dropped it. And it was when I dropped it, it was gone, and it was like, fine. And as it happened, I wasn't there for very much longer after that, funny enough. Probably a matter of weeks. And, you know, probably a year and a half from there, maybe even a year from there, I was a dad. And at the time when that situation happened with that guy, I didn't even know the person. I hadn't even met the person who I had the child with, who I married. I just didn't have any need for that game. And to be honest with you, he probably didn't want to be there in that job, as I say, either. And probably the only thing he had was the stories he told, and for me to come along and in his eyes trump them, You know, I think if I'd known that, you know, that it was causing him anguish, I probably wouldn't have done it. That's the nature of me. But I was a bit naive, and I learned something. I was glad to learn it, and I just didn't need to keep a foot in that game. It's like, no, I'm out. It's fine. Not even any hard feelings. It's just vaporized the whole situation. Genuinely so. Not with a secret little middle finger up underneath my jumper or anything. It just genuinely, you know, if you were hunting for remnants of that situation, you wouldn't find it, sort of thing. It was gone. And I personally also felt privileged to have sort of attained that state, if you like, on that subject. Anyway, so I did know that tell the lesser story was a good piece of advice in situations like that. Some guy's gone on 2 balloon rides and he's telling everyone you can't get any better than that, and you've been on 3. Just tell him about the only time you ever went in a balloon. You know, let him win. Just let him have his win. It doesn't matter. There's, you know, think of it almost like as a child, you have to win every moment of every day in every situation under every single and any circumstances, no matter what. And you know, as you get a bit older, you sort of think, I don't have to beat my mate at Scrabble today. It'd be great if I did. But, you know, I don't have to win this one, I don't have to win that one. I don't have to win every single thing I take part in under all circumstances, no matter what. You know, we've all seen it on the American comedy movies where you get a guy, you know, I don't know, his rough example would be he's playing football in the back garden with his kid or something, and he scores a goal, and he's like goes up to his kid who's like, say 5, and he's like, in your face, eat my goal. And you're like, all right, mate. At ease, fella, you know. There can be that, you know, if that's what you got with the child, I'm sure that there'd be reasons for that being funny, if you like. But, you know, I'm just trying to explain is there are times where you might want to just be gracious. And I remember sitting in a bar once, kind of in a bar. It was in Harvey Nichols, it was in a bar, champagne bar in Harvey Nichols once, and it was great. I was sitting there, I was drinking my virgin pina colada or whatever I was drinking, and there was it was fantastic. The barman was an Italian guy called Glauco. I got to know him quite well. He was a cool guy. He was doing bar tricks, you know, serving everyone, and he was doing tricks on the bar, and it was just, there were people, typical London, the people from all over the world sitting around that bar and in the rest of the lounge and everything. And there was a guy there who worked for the United Nations, and he was he was very drunk, and he decided that I was his ticket to get, I don't know why he decided this, he decided that I was his ticket to getting a girlfriend for the night. And I wasn't, I mean, anyway, but that was what he decided, and we had a laugh, and you got the feeling that he probably wasn't going to remember even walking into that bar, never mind walking out. I don't know where he'd come from, but he arrived drunk. And anyway, but we were having a laugh, and he's telling me that who he worked for and all the rest of it. And there was a couple of women at the bar as well. I was having a laugh and a joke with them. And then these 2 guys, these young sort of, for the moment I call them kind of like, you know, sort of Arabic, sort of Muslim sort of looking type dudes, young lads, probably in their early 20s. They turned up and started having a laugh with us, and they were obviously particularly interested in the 2 women, and who weren't that bothered about that. They were just there having a laugh as well. But anyway, so they were having a laugh and a joke. We're all having this laugh and a joke, and I just was sitting there thinking, this is why I love London. Look at us, bunch of idiots, the lot of us, all disparate dudes, all strapped around this bar having a laugh. And then these 2 they were asked by the girls, where are you from? And they said, oh, we're from a terrorist country. Now, at this point, I'm laughing more than anyone. They thought it was funny what they'd just said. I'm now choking because I'm thinking, sitting next to this guy from the UN, listen to these lads saying this for a laugh. Everything was going to be fine, and I knew that, but it was the irony of it was just so funny to me. And they were so they carried on like this for a while. Guess the terrorist country that we're from, sort of thing. And the guy from the UN was too drunk to really know what was going on. He's looking at me like, why are you laughing? And I'm like, carry on. Tell this guy. I'm like, to these two guys, I think they were Iranian or Iraqi. I can't remember. I apologise. I should really remember. Not that it really matters. They're all beautiful, but they were having this. They were having this laugh, and I was saying to him, "Tell this guy." He didn't quite hear you. Tell them where you're from, and they sort of didn't know why it was so funny. And so then I explained that, I said to the guy, "Can you tell these guys where you work?" And he said, "Oh, I've been in Beirut and stuff, and I'm mostly based in Holland, somewhere in Holland. It might have been The Hague, I don't know, probably, I suppose." He was there, and he was over in the UK, staying at a hotel across the road or something at the moment. And he worked for the United Nations, and for me, that was, I'd entertained myself anyway, even if no one else found it funny. I thought they could take that, and they did. It was fine. They still didn't find it as funny as I found it, but anyway. But had they have been serious and everything about it, I probably would have kept it to myself, kept my, and just sort of left it and thought, how funny is that? But leave it to myself. So sometimes you tell the lesser story, sometimes you tell the whole thing in the hope that everyone's gonna feel gratified at hearing it. I always think if someone's got a great story to tell, it's added value to the moment. I don't sit there and think, that's bigger than my story, I need to delete this person. But anyway, and I'm sure there's plenty of us like that. But so that was the remainder of my walk, and that was another bunch of rambling that I did. I came out the other end of the loop, which is what I intended to do. You could probably do that in several different ways. There was all kinds of different paths I could have taken, and but the main thing is I've had another little walk, done a little Facebook Live. Signal got bad, so I've recorded this video and I'll post it. There's nothing really much going on. It's just a wander through the countryside and a little chat with a guy who wanted to say something. So that's about it. And for any of you who watch it, well done, because it's quite long. But Ruislip Woods, Ducks Hill Road, sort of probably just about still in Northwood in Middlesex. And this is the woods there. And this has been me. And although in Facebook Live you can flip the camera around backwards and forwards, you can't when you're recording on an iPhone, as far as I'm aware. You have to decide at the beginning of the recording which way round you want the camera. And so it's not facing me, so I'm going to do my traditional little moves of putting myself on the camera. I'm assuming I've done it by doing that. Thanks for watching. Take care, enjoy the rest of your day, and goodbye.